Hey there and welcome. While we're waiting for people to jump on, I'd love for you to give me a wave or tell us where you're from. Just want to make sure that you've got all of the stuff working properly to really get in there and play with us in the sandbox. So let's ask some more questions. If you're familiar with iridology in general, give me an I am in the comments box. Excellent, thank you. And if you're familiar with constitutional iridology, give me that too in the comments box. You know, if I know what the background is of the people who are watching this, I can usually tweak the presentation a little bit on the fly so that you can have everything you need and just get the meat out of the presentation. We are going to take a look at the question of do Irides change? And we're going to do that from the basis of constitutional iridology today. Just grab a little sip of water that has liquid minerals and liquid chlorophyll in it because that makes it yummy. Take a good look at these images that are on your screen now. And even if you don't know much about iridology yet, just take a good look. These were taken in 2015 with an 8 megapixel digital camera. These are the eye photos of a gentleman who is in his 40s, and just take a really, really good look at them. These are the same person's eyes taken 18 months later. I want to ask you a really, really direct question. What has changed? What difference do you see? Give me a comment in the comment box and tell me, what do you notice? Yeah, you see that they're brighter. They look clearer. Yeah. More definition. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what you're going to see, let's do a show both of those side by side. So we've got the picture from 3 years ago and one from 18 months ago. Pretty amazing, right? What this person accomplished in 18 months? Oops, not true. There's actually no change in his eyes, none whatsoever. What actually did change was the camera. The image on the left, as I said earlier, is an 8 megapixel picture done with an incandescent ring flash. The image on the right was taken with a 24 megapixel camera that had the lighting set for fluorescent, and it has an LED flash. So what does that mean? What does all of that mean? The incandescent flash on the 8 megapixel image, so the image that's on the left, shoots a little yellow. So incandescent is a yellower light. Fluorescent is a bluer light, and LED, which is what this one is right here, is even bluer. So simply by changing two things, well, three things, the light source, the light color, and the resolution, we can make it look like this person has some miraculous changes, right? Now, I am really, really concerned about how this shows up on Facebook and on Instagram, because I'm really concerned that so many people are talking about how their eyes have changed. Their eyes look like this, then they did this little 6-week cleanse, and man, their eyes are brighter, they're bluer, they're clearer, there's whatever. When in reality, what has changed is the technology, right? The camera is what has changed. How do we know the difference here? Look first at the skin tones. The one on the left is much more orange. The one on the right is a bluey pink. Look at the sclera. This is a more yellowy sclera. This is a more purplish sclera, pinky purple. And that's a dead giveaway that what has changed is the source of the light. There are so many people on social media right now who are propagating this information. They are spreading the information that you do a cleanse and it changes your eye color. Well, a couple of issues with that. Number one, you don't do a cleanse to change your eye color. Number two, you can't change the color of your iris by doing a cleanse. You may be able to brighten and clear up the sclera, but you will not change the eye color because the eye color is inherent. We're going to talk about ways that the eyes do change in just a minute, but it's really important that we understand that to do a before and after picture like this is a technology change, not a cleansing or a body change, okay? So we need to know that for absolute sure. Does that make sense? It's kind of scary. You know, I was on Instagram a while back and someone had posted a little video showing before and after and circling, you know, look at this pigment and look at how it's changed. And, you know, this person did a cleanse and look at the difference. And I went on and I commented and I said, well, there are some issues with this, that the skin tones are a different color, the sclera is a different color. And so what changed here was the camera and the technology. And the person replied, and I was dumbfounded because this is clearly a person who doesn't understand modern iridology. The person said, that's not my problem, that's your problem. I am just reposting what other people have posted. I'm going, well, you're posting garbage. You're posting stuff that's not right. So the better question here is, what changes can be seen in the irides and what do those changes mean? Right? We need to ask that as a two-part question. What can change and what does it mean? Because we do know that the irides change, just not in the way North American iridology has claimed for the last 60 years. Now, I've been an iridologist for 40 years. And the first 10 years of that, I was practicing as a North American iridologist. So the training of a North American iridologist and a constitutional or European iridologist are quite different. So for the first 10 years, I had studied North American and I was practicing North American. And by the end of about 10 years, I was about ready to throw in the towel and walk away from iridology completely. Because even with all of the cleanses and diet changes and supplements that I personally did, that I recommended to clients, that we worked with so diligently, I never once saw irides change the way I had been taught they would. Yeah, you'd think that after 10 years of cleansing and taking supplements and cleaning up my diet and changing my lifestyle, that we would have seen some change. But there was none, nada, rien, didn't happen, right? And that was really frustrating. So I was about to just leave it all behind. And that was when I was blessed to hear about constitutional iridology. The more I studied it, the more it made sense to me. The easier it was to do an excellent reading, and the more beneficial it was for both me and my clients. Yeah. So are you ready to learn what constitutional iridology teaches about how and why irides change? If you are ready, give me a ready in the comment box. And I just want to encourage those of you who are watching this as a replay on Facebook or on YouTube or somewhere like that, I would love it if you would hop on over to YouTube. And if you're not there already, like this video. And if you would also leave a comment, and if you would subscribe to my channel, it's just simply Judith Cobb, I think. I have it on autopilot, so I don't know. But if you Google Judith Cobb YouTube, you'll find me. The first change is pigment may accumulate or be acquired, as we sometimes say, or become more dense. I've seen many instances of this. Now, this is not the accumulation of sulfur or heavy metals or drugs in the eye, not at all. This is an inherent predisposition. So the iris is inherent. It shows us what you've received from your ancestors going back 3 or 4 generations. So when we see pigment accumulating in the eye or building in the eye, we see pigment there now that wasn't there 5 years or 10 years ago. That is an inherent thing that is showing us what the programming is. So for example, a good comparison is crow's feet. We are all inherently programmed to develop wrinkles on our face, and crow's feet are the ones that women worry about the most, I think. And so, but we have a bit of a program in our genes that says at this point in time, the collagen structure is going to start to break down a little more rapidly. Now, we can have an impact on that. We can either speed it up and get wrinklier earlier with sun exposure and smoking and a lousy diet and things like that, or we can slow it down and delay it by having a healthier diet, a cleaner lifestyle, and avoiding too much exposure to the sun, right? So we have the same thing in our eyes, and that is that there's a genetic program for when pigment is going to surface or accumulate or appear in the eye, and that gives us an indication about some things that are genetically programmed to be happening in the body, not just in the eye, but in the body. So the first thing we need to know then is pigment may be acquired or it may become more dense. Again, I've never, ever seen, in spite of cleansing, in spite of herbs, in spite of special diets, I've never seen pigment disappear from an eye. So what do we mean about pigment? Let's look at a really good example of pigment acquisition. Actually, we'll look at a couple of these. These two images are again of the same person, taken about 20 years apart. And this was with actually a print film camera. And so, and I know that because of the shape of the flash on it. And this is with the 24 megapixel camera. How do we know these are actually the same person? Well, when we look for specific markings in here, we are going to see that we've got them all in here. But you will also notice that these are handheld cameras, and so they weren't held completely level, which is why it looks like some of these marks have actually shifted. They haven't shifted, the camera just wasn't exactly level both times. So that's one thing to be aware of. Note again that this was an incandescent flash, and so it's a little more yellow. This again is the fluorescent setting with the LED, and that makes it a little more blue. Okay, so we've got that. Great. We've ascertained that these are the same eyes. Notice how different the pupil size is, because the pupil size is going to affect how dense the pigments appear. When we're looking at an eye, this is what we would consider to be pigment. Certainly the appearance of the pigment is affected by the light source, the light quality, and the light intensity, but it is also affected by pupil size. When we have a large pupil, we have this distance of iris that is compressed. The same amount of tissue that is from here to here is from there to there, and the pupil is smaller, which means this tissue has been spread out. So I compare, and that will make the pigment look a little less dense. That's not cleansing, that's spreading out. Do you remember a few years ago, Lululemon had a problem with their yoga pants? Yeah, and they looked great on the hanger, but when women put them on and the fabric stretched, it became almost transparent. It's kind of what we're talking about here. The tissue here is more compressed, and that's when the pants are on the hanger. Here, the tissue is spread out, and that's when the pants are being worn. And so as that spreads the pigment over a bigger surface area and can make it look more diffuse or lighter. Okay, so that's important to know here. Now, what is the other big thing that you notice when you look at these eyes? Give you a minute to do that quick comparison. Do you see something in one eye that you don't see in the other? Yeah, you got it, didn't you? And that is that in the newer image, this image was taken just recently. This gentleman is in his mid-60s. This was done when he was about 40. You see this here? This dark little bit of pigment here? It is nowhere to be found 20 odd years ago. This pigment specifically suggests that the liver is cranky, that the liver has gotten crankier with age, that it was inherently programmed to get cranky. Now, what I want to really focus on here is that that has built over time. Pigment like this teaches us two things. The color of the pigment teaches us which organ is likely to be out of balance or wants to be out of balance. This is the organ of origin for the source of the problem, right? Where the pigment is sitting in the eye, how it is positioned, teaches us which organs are suffering under the impact of the first organ being out of balance. So pigment like this gives us two really key pieces of information. Which organ is the stress originating from, and which organ is receiving the brunt of that imbalance. Let's have a look at another one. This is my son's eye, one of my son's eyes. And the image on the left was taken when he was about 10 years old. The image on the right was taken when he was about 30 years old. You'll notice this is the same set of cameras we saw in the last set of pictures. So we've got, this is a scan of a print with an incandescent flash. This is the 24 megapixel with the fluorescent light setting and the LED light. So as we look at this, we see the key differences again, pupil size. Because of light intensity, this camera is much more intense for light and it tends to shrink the pupil down. But we see some other things here. We see that the pupil is misshapen exactly the same way. And we're going to talk about how that can be a dynamic indicator as well. We have a fiber coming right down here from about 4 o'clock to about 4:30. And we see that fiber right here. So that tells us this is the same eye. Now we can look for other very subtle differences, like this little rarefaction here is sitting right here, for instance. This little teeny rarefaction right here is sitting right here. But you will notice that this pigment has been acquired. We've cut this one off slightly. This pigment is acquired, this pigment is acquired, and so is this pigment. So notice how many of these little freckles of pigment have appeared over the last 20 years. So again, we need to take that step back and say what color is the pigment, because that tells us the source of the issue, which organ is out of balance the most or genetically inherently wants to be out of balance. And then the location can tell us which other organs are likely to be enduring the stress of that primary imbalance. Now again, this pigment color that we're seeing primarily in the image on the right suggests more of an inherent predisposition towards a liver imbalance, which is very inherent going back through the generations of the family. We also know that, that with this kind of stuff, again, we don't necessarily need to isolate each and every pigment. The more pigments we see in an eye, the less important each one is. The more pigments we see, the more global we know the impact is. So we aren't necessarily going to offer, you know, specific kidney support and specific pancreas support and specific support for every one of those pigment locations. We are going to offer a more global support unless the symptoms warrant doing otherwise. I want to take a moment now to introduce you to the course called Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology. It is an iridology course that is starting on Wednesday, January 15th. It will be online as live webinars from 5 till 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Now you'll see on here that we have listed different time zones for Pacific, Central, and Eastern if you're in North America. And the BST is if you're in England or the UK. And if you're in Australia, I know Australia has more than one time zone, but the Australian Eastern Daylight Time is the next day at 11 a.m. So you can see how this fits in with where you live. Now, wanted to also just remind you, regardless of where you live on the face of the planet, take a moment and double check how your time zones change. Here in Canada, we go on to daylight savings time on March the 8th this year. So that's just a couple of months into this program. And so particularly for those of you in the UK And in Australia, and for some Canadians who have Central Standard Time, you may or may not change time zones, or you might change at a different time in the year. So please look that up so that you know how this fits with your time zone. Now, if you're interested in getting more information, and I will give you a little more basic information about the course as well in our time together today, please hop on over to iridology.education/priority. That is the page that gives you all the information and has the enrollment links. So another change that we often see is called a lipemic diathesis. And when we see this, this is actually not an iris sign. It's in the cornea. So, you know, you've got your iris and then you've got that clear layer in front of it that is called the cornea. And when we see this, we are looking at this white milky ring. This is actually in the cornea. We rarely see this in people under the age of 20. We often see it in people over the age of 60. This is not an indication of going senile. It's not a firm indication of cholesterol issues or sodium issues. This is an indication of a liver enzyme imbalance that messes up how the person handles their carbohydrates. So the most important thing for us to know about this sign is, when did it start? This is why good iridologists will take photos of their clients' eyes at least every 2 years, but preferably every year. Because like I said, we don't usually see this in people under the age of 20. I've seen it in people in that 20 to 30 age range. It's getting more common, which is really scary. And we see it frequently in people over the age of 60. This sign is not going to dissolve. We're not going to be able to get rid of it. The iris and the cornea both are very stingy. Once they've got something, they're not giving it back. This sign can begin as a simple little white edge that is just a part way around the eye, and it may become more opaque. It may become wider, or it may eventually go all the way around, just like it does in this particular iris. So again, we're not going to dissolve this sign, or we're not going to get pigment washed out of the eye, nothing like that. That's not really what iridology is all about. We want to take what we see in the eye and trace the issues back to understand the root cause of why this indicator, why this marker is there, why it has formed. When we understand that, we can then begin to implement things that will help to restore health, bring balance back into the body. Quite frankly, it does not matter that we get rid of things out of the eyes, because we're not going to. What matters more is, do we actually help to improve the person's health? And that's what we are absolutely looking to do here, is improve health. And in many cases, stall off or mitigate things that are just brewing. Another thing that we will sometimes see is the pupil will change shape. Now, the pupil equals the spinal alignment and the nerve feed to the body, the pupil shape. So when the pupil is not nice and round, when it's got a flattened side or two, that tells us that some things in the spine are not properly aligned, have been misaligned for a long time. And we know that when the spine is misaligned, the nerve feeds to the rest of the body can be really messed up. There are tens of thousands of nerve endings in the iris. We don't even know what they all do yet. But we know that all nerves ultimately go to or come out of the brain, right? And so the ones going to take messages to the brain, the ones coming out bring messages back to the body for a response. Flattenings suggest long-standing spinal subluxations. This is a sign that can be changed because it is not inherent, it is dynamic. The longer the pupil has been flattened, the more chronic the condition, the longer it will take to change the pupil back to round. So you need to do the right spinal alignment work, the right physical work, emotional work, the right supplements to support the nervous system, and you can eventually reshape the pupil to round. If the bones of the spine have remodeled to support the misaligned positions, it's going to take decades of constantly getting realigned and the right supplements to get things back into proper alignment and make that pupil go round again. But that will also then help to improve the nerve feed, right? We've got a lot more eyes to look at, but let's learn a little bit more about the upcoming class. Here is what you will learn in the class. I just want to reiterate that what we're learning today is just the tiniest tip of the iceberg. There is so much more to learn. The course Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology will teach you constitutional iridology at a level to prepare you to certify as an iridologist with IPA if you so choose. So you're going to learn what the different iris and pigment colors mean and what all of the little marks mean. And for some of you, this means there will be some review of things you already know. Others of you will have some relearning to do, maybe some unlearning to do if you've learned other styles of iridology. The rest of you may be starting from scratch, and that is just fabulous. We've had everybody from brand new right up to previously certified iridologists take this course, and we'll hear from some of them in just a moment. Every one of them benefited from it. Even just understanding the difference between blue eyes, hazel eyes, and brown eyes will give you a lot of great information to work with your clients. I know you'll find that no matter what your iridology background is or isn't, you will benefit from the course. You absolutely will. So we need to remember as we do this that the iris is inherent. Everything we see in the iris is inherent. So this course will teach you the iridology. It will also teach you sclerology. So we look at the white of the eye. Where the iris is inherent, the sclera is very dynamic, and the blood vessels that are more obvious, that become more obvious, tell us what's going on currently in the body. When we monitor the sclera, we can actually help to mitigate problems or correct problems that are brewing that have not become a clinical issue. We can also see what the more clinical types of things are and work on them as well. Ultimately, this course is designed to help you be the best clinical iridologist possible. And it's also designed to prepare you to take the IPA certification exam if you so choose. It contains all of the curriculum you need to sit for the IPA exam. Within the course, I will teach you to integrate whatever nutrition and herbology training you already have as they relate to iridology to help you create programs on the spot for your clients. I know a lot of nutritionists and herbalists see the client for the first time, then practitioner goes off and spends 2 or 3 or 4 hours of their own time creating a program for the client, and then they either email that program out or the client comes back for a free follow-up to receive the program. So the practitioner is working 3 or 4 or 5 hours and being paid for one. Unless you're charging like $500 or $600 for that first appointment, you're not making enough money to pay your bills. And that's just an honest truth, right? And so my goal with iridology is not only to have you be an amazing iridologist, but to help you understand how to create effective programs on the spot in your paid client sessions using iridology as your guide so that you can either see more clients or have more free time or do whatever you need, but work 1 hour and get paid for 1 hour. So just to be extra clear, I am not actually teaching a nutrition course within an iridology course. I'm not teaching a herbology course within the iridology course, but I do touch on those points. They're included in the textbook, and it gives you the ability then to connect what you already know to iridology. You will be best served in this course if you already have a foundation in nutrition and or herbology, even if it's as simple as you've done a lot of reading and studying over the years. It doesn't have to be a hard and fast course with a certificate or diploma. You'll also be very well served if you have a really strong understanding of anatomy and physiology, because we talk a lot about physiology especially. In the course, you will also learn the ways that eyes do not change. And this is important in the face of all of the outdated information that is circulating out there on the internet. Let's look at a few of those ways that eyes actually do not change right now. Back when I first started studying iridology and studied North American iridology, I was taught that when we saw a shape like this, which we call a lacuna, and there were lines inside it, that these were healing lines. That as we worked with the client and the client's body corrected and became stronger, we would see more of these lines within this space. We now know that doesn't happen. We know that the fibers that are in the eye are in the eye. They are not going to change. There's not going to be more of them or less of them. The fibers are not actually even going to change how they actually sit in the eye, except as related to the pupil size. Okay. When we see this, we are actually, you can see it's a little bit darker inside this lacuna. The eye is made up of layers of fiber. And so when we're seeing that lacuna that is darker, we're actually looking at a split between the layers. So we're looking down into the depth of the eye. We're not going to add more layers to it. Other ways the irides do not change, and that is the iris, or the lacunae actually do not get smaller. Again, remember our Lululemon example a few minutes ago? Let's look at these three eyes. This is all the same eye. Again, we've got two different cameras, so two different sets of technology to explain the difference in color. Let's look at this lacuna right here because it's pretty obvious. When that pupil is massive, this lacuna is narrow and tall. As the pupil gets smaller, this lacuna gets wider and shorter. As the pupil gets very small, again, these fibers have been stretched out, just like the Lululemon pants. This lacuna is now much wider, but much shorter. So the lacuna actually didn't change its shape or size. It did not get smaller. It simply changed a little bit because the fibers got stretched out, but they didn't move really on the source or on the surface of the eye. Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology, again, is taught via 20 live webinar classes. And so the course looks like this. We have 40 hours of training spread out over 20 sessions, so one class per week. It includes iridology and sclerology, as we've already mentioned, at a level to prepare you for certification with IPA if you so choose. Now, some of my students opt to not certify. That's perfectly fine. I love them just as much as I love my students who do certify. We tie in herbology, nutrition, lifestyle, and so much more. Here's an example of how the way I teach constitutional iridology in this program can help you in your wellness coaching business. All right, and that was not quite right. I should update my notes. All right, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology. This is what you get. This is what you get. We'll get on track here. 20 sessions, live webinars, about 40 hours worth of class. So you're online with me at the same time and we're talking back and forth. You have your camera and your microphone turned on so we can actually have conversations back and forth. You get a 200-page downloadable digital textbook, which is always kept up to date. That's why I leave it digital, because that way IPA does update their curriculum every few years and things change. And so when things change, I update the textbook and you will always have access to the most recent version. Cool, right? You also receive a 40-page set of cheat sheets, digital downloadable, and a digital downloadable iridology map. We're going to talk about the importance of all of that in just a moment. This is what one of my students said. She's been graduated for a couple of years and she is using this. And Karen came to me with no iridology background. But this is what she said after she had this under her belt for a few years. I asked, how has learning constitutional iridology helped you in your business? Now, if you're like me, you want to see lots of testimonials before you invest in something. And so I'm going to invite you to hop on over to the IPA instructors page. That's found at iridologyassn.org. And you want to click on the link, I believe it's called instructors. Scroll down to Canada, scroll down to me, and see what people have been saying. Karen says this: Iridology has helped me to understand the relationships between different organs and organ systems more in depth. Iridology also gives me an advantage of seeing the potential for different genetic traits and qualities that may be underlying. By observing the constitution, for example, you can extrapolate how the person's body will likely respond to applications of healing methods. Therefore, it has helped me to expand my knowledge and increased efficiency. Yes, that's what we were talking about, not taking your own time to do a program and get it done in the session, right? And increased efficiency at providing more precise recommendations for health-oriented options. Love it. Now she continues on. Judith, I just returned from a regenerative detoxification course where iridology is implemented. I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with their iridology education. They had no support, they have unanswered questions, and they have a lot of confusion. Mostly they finished their classes not knowing how to implement what they had learned. I feel so absolutely blessed to have been taught by you. I feel totally supported, even still as I graduated almost 2 years ago now. I don't think there's anyone out there practicing, educating, and teaching iridology like you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm eternally grateful for your never-ending patience and support. I love that. The reason I love that is because she hits a key point. You're going to go online, and I know you are, and you're going to look for other iridology teachers. I know it. You're even going to look for IPA certified in teachers. Do it. Look at what they charge. What they are charging for their tuition is for iridology only. I don't know of any other iridology instructors who are IPA certified who integrate nutrition, who integrate herbology, and who continue to support their students after the course is done. When you go to university, or let's start here, your course tuition, what is the tuition? $23.95 is what this course is worth just for the curriculum, just for the curriculum. When you go to university, you have to pay your tuition, and then you have to buy all your learning materials. So you'd have to buy a textbook, your iridology map, and your cheat sheets. That's a $450 value. Now we're talking Canadian dollars here. I'll explain that in a minute. I also offer some additional support. When you have finished the course and graduated from the program, usually at university, right? You finish your course, cut off, done, no more contact, no more support. You're on your own, fly. Just go fly on your own, right? That's not how I run this. During the course, we have a private Facebook group and office hours webinars. That's why this is worth $20,000 to give you support between classes. But even after you finish the course, even if you decide to certify and you're certified already and you just want to hang out with us, this is for you. This is to give you ongoing support after the course finishes. You never get kicked out, right? I also guarantee with all of this that my live class sizes will never have more than 10 students. So 10 students or less, so that you get the time you need to have the questions answered that you need to have answered. So this private Facebook group and these private office hours webinars are like a mastermind mentorship, right? And if you look online, you will find that mastermind mentorships are usually, well, I know my business mentor pays $20,000 a month for business mentoring. $20,000 a month. This is just included as a gift for the long term. Bonus bundle number 2, every class we have is actually recorded and loaded to your student site. You get recordings of every individual topic, and you get recordings, access to recordings of the last 18 months of office hours calls. So these are all stored on student sites For you, they are not downloadable, but you can go back and log in and listen to them as often as you want, as many times as you want for the ongoing long term. I also offer the IPA exam mentoring as a bonus. Most of the IPA instructors have the curriculum that they charge for, and then if you want to certify, they charge extra to mentor you for the exams. Now, I encourage all of my students to do exam 1 mentoring and exam 2 mentoring, even if they're not going to IPA certify. IPA exam 1 mentoring is I provide you with 10 case studies. You write them up in a form that I will teach you that you will never use after you finish the program again. You send them back to me, and I take up to 10 hours of my time to mark those. And then you and I meet together one-on-one on a private Zoom meeting to go over your work and to make sure that you are rock solid. If there are things you need to have a little extra support on, we use that hour to teach that or to mentor that. Things that you've done really well, I give you a great big pat on the back and love you, and that's great. When you and I decide that you are rock solid, I then give you IPA exam number 2, which is a case study that IPA provides to me. I give it to you. You write it up, again, in that format that you will never again use. You send it back to me. I take an hour to mark that. Then you and I meet for another 1 hour privately to go over that with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that you are totally on track. When you and I both agree that you are ready to roll, then you will need to purchase your IPA student membership. I will let IPA know that you have completed exam 1 and 2, and then you can go online and purchase the log on for the IPA exam and take care of doing exam number 3. The total value of the bonuses, so from the 450 down to the 1272, is 28,907 Canadian. That is just the bonuses. I want you to stop for a moment as you look at this. Now, actually, we're just going to pop ahead one more screen because I want to cover this first. What actually is the tuition? The tuition is $23.95 Canadian, or 5 payments of $529. Now, remember that the total value of the course without the tuition is nearly $29,000. That is the value of the course. That's not what you pay. Your tuition is $23.95 Canadian, or 5 payments of $529, 5 monthly payments. Now, I want you to stop for a minute and think about this. 40 hours of training, plus all of the in-between class support, plus all the ongoing support. Let's pretend you had to go somewhere to do a 5 to 6 day class, which is what 40 hours of training would be, right? So you take that time and you go there. You pay your tuition. You have your transportation. Maybe it's airfare. You have your hotel while you're there. You have your meals while you're there. What expenses did you leave at home? Childcare, pet care, elder care, whatever. You also have the week off work. What's that going to be worth? At least $3,000, if not more, right? At least. And at the end of that course, that's it. No more contact. I've actually had people ask me that have done these other programs where they went and did the 2-3 day weekends or the 5 or 6 day intensive, contact me and say, will you mentor me for the exam? And it's no, I don't know what you've learned. I can't mentor you for the exam. Or they've gone back to their instructor and said, well, how do I use this? And the instructor said, oh, you'll figure that out. You're smart. That's not what I do. That's what the ongoing mentoring is for, is to help you, give you some ideas of how this will work for you, how to implement it so that you can really make this fly. Now let's talk about those Canadian dollars, because I know a lot of the people who take this course are from the States, from Australia, or from the UK. If you're in Canada, you totally get Canadian dollars. The US, your dollar's worth more than ours. Knock about 30% off this. When you go to the registration page, it's going to show these dollar values. When you get your credit card statement, you will find, if you're in the US, that, oh, that's a nice surprise. It's going to come out to be about $18.50 US, give or take, depending on the exchange rate. If you live in the UK, it's going to come out to be about $14.50 British pounds sterling. If you live in Australia, it's going to come out to be about $27.75 Australian dollars. So that's how it converts. The course again starts on January 15th, and we've got more eyes to look at, so stay with me here. The course starts on January 15th, so if you are ready to take the course, hop on over to iridology.education/priority, choose the payment plan you want, the 1-pay or the 5-pay, and get yourself enrolled. Remember, only 10 students, seats are selling, spots are going. When I hit 10, we cut off registration, or we'll be cutting off registration on January the 11th to give us time to get the registrations all completed. Once you're registered, you will receive 3 emails. 2 will come immediately. The first one is a confirmation that says, yay, you're in, yay. The second is a welcome email that has a link to your student contract. I need you to complete that and click submit right away. Within 1 business day of me receiving that back, I will send you another email that will have all of your webinar links, your student site links, and your Facebook group invitation. And ideally, I also like to schedule a phone call, well, a Zoom call with you if we have time to get to know you a little bit and to just welcome you personally into the program. Here's what it looks like once you're inside your student site. This is actually the title page of the textbook, and you will see down the side here you have all of your lessons, and within each lesson you will see the breakdown of all of the different sections. Now, it might be download, it might be a video to watch. There's lots of materials in here. Every lesson has a quiz. You have to pass the quiz with 100% in order to unlock the next lesson. And the lessons are scheduled to be available 1 day prior to when we will be covering it in class. So you won't have access to all 20 weeks as soon as you log in. You'll have access to lesson 1, right? And then when we've covered that material in class and you've passed the quiz, the day before the next class, the next lesson will become available to you. I do that very specifically because I teach this in a logical, sequential manner, and I need you to have the foundation before we go to the next step. I need you to have that step before we go to the next step, and that will make your learning so much more solid. But once you've completed a lesson, you can go back and review as many times as you want. This is the lovely Michelle Davies. She came to me with already 4 different certifications in Iridology. Right? Pretty intense, right? This is what she says. This is the most amazing Iridology course I've taken. Judith's course is top on my list. Judith's course is very complete as it contains the most accurate Iridology, including sclerology, and most importantly, how to put it all together and make a proper assessment. I feel very confident in my nutritional practice now. Love it. Again, if you want to hop on over to the iridologyassn.org page, you can see many more testimonials just like that one. We've already sold several seats to the program, and again, we only have room for 10 students. We'll be closing registration either when all the seats are full or on January 11th at 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, whichever comes first. If you want to learn Iridology, hop on over to iridology.education/priority right now and get registered. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care and thanks for being with me today. Bye for now.